In this video I'm going to look at my workflow when creating a photo book from some old negatives. The negatives are from a trip to India in the late 80s and they've survived quite well. I'm using a Huion Light box to look through the negatives, and this works well for a £25 device. It plugs into a USB port and allows me to identify which negatives I'm interested in. I decided not to use gloves when scanning the negatives, but this makes handling them an even more careful job. Being careful not to touch the frame surface, just the edges of the negative. Loading the negatives to the carrier requires care also to get them well lined up, and this is especially tricky with negatives that have developed a curve. I found a tapping technique can get them into the right position. I'm using a blower to get off any dust, and it's as well to get a decent sized one as this is more effective. I'm using a Plustek 82000i scanner to scan the negatives. This was around £300 and is a compromise between a cheap low-end scanner and the still being sold high-end scanners. My film wasn't taken on professional cameras, so I think it's good enough. The carrier has notches in, which makes locating required frames easier. I'm using the Silverfast SE Plus software which came with the scanner. It's not the most intuitive software, but once you've scanned a few negatives it makes sense. The main thing is to set our film type, file name and path to save under, format and photo quality. Some of the negatives I have predate the film settings in the software, in which case I have to choose the closest match. These negatives are Kodak Gold, which is included in the software. I set the resolution to the top of the green. This will produce about a 20 megabyte file and fills the screen and provides a good enough resolution for the photo books I want to make. The scanner does 2 passes, and the second infrared pass gets rid of many defects. Pre-scanning gives an idea of the condition of the negative and how to crop it. I generally leave working on the image to Photoshop rather than changing the settings in Silverfast, though sometimes I will play with them before final scanning. I speeded up the scanning for the video, but it only takes a few minutes per frame, and I can scan a couple of rolls in an evening. Scanning film is a long-term project. Once scanned, I load the image into Photoshop and do some image editing if necessary. For this frame I'll do a bit of cleanup, including taking out some of the spots and looking at some of the scratches. Some scratches I can take out fairly easily, some are a bit more difficult. I scan to the TIFF file format as this is lossless, and once I've finished scanning a trip, I'll move the files into a folder and edit them down to those I want to include in the book. For this book I've selected 62 images. I use the Photoshop batch feature to convert the images to JPEG format. I'll then go through them at a larger size to check that I'm happy with each image. For this book I'm using Blurb books, and I load the images into their BookWrite software. I keep the layout minimal and just add a few tile pages. I run through the preview option for both the cover and pages to make sure all is well before uploading the book and ordering however many copies I want. A couple of weeks later the book arrives and I can go through it and check I'm happy with it. I found Blurb consistently produce good results, and I'm pretty much always happy with their books. While I do still have the original prints in photo albums, these newly created books reawaken interest in the images, and often the reproduction is better than the prints in the old fading and falling to pieces albums. So that's my workflow from negative to photo book. I hope you found this interesting, and let me know in the comments what your process is for making photo books from all negatives and any tips you might have.